What in the 20s is going
In the
on?
20s,
Think about
yeah.
the
The
20s.
20s,
What
baby.
in the
20s, plenty.
What in the 20s is
I
going
am here for
on?
my 20s, baby.
This is the 20s.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Zama Mkize, and this is What's in the 20s, a podcast where you listen to me grow through it, baby. On today's episode, we're going to be speaking about the battle in your mind. The battle in your mind. We we have to be very honest about the war that we face essentially every single day in our minds, and it starts from the moment we wake up and how we get through the day and all the rest. It starts when that alarm rings and you have to tell yourself get up. I think that when we're in a dark place, right, a lot of negative feelings come up, such as feeling depressed, feeling anxious, feeling lazy, feeling fatigued, feeling just down and out. I know that we've all experienced those kinds of feelings where you're just kind of demotivated, uninterested, unmotivated, uninspired, all of that. And when we're feeling, I guess, those kind of stresses and pressure or whatever it is that is making us feel so down, we can tend to fall into habits that aren't productive for us. And I'll explain. So, say, for example, being stressed and down or whatever it is makes you think, okay, I want to drink a lot more, drink alcohol a lot more, or I want to smoke more, or I want to binge eat, binge shows, I want to procrastinate. It's like all these methods of self-sabotaging essentially that really leads us down a spiral. And a lot of these toxins that we engage in are actually depressants, and it's interesting because we don't even realize what we do is we try to teach ourselves that, oh, because I'm sad, oh, because I'm heartbroken, oh, because I'm down or whatever, let me go buy myself a big tub of ice cream, or let me go get myself a big hearty meal, or let me go spend the weekend drinking till I black out or whatever it is, to try and numb the pain or forget about my problems. And you're telling yourself that that is something that makes me feel good, that is something that makes me feel better. And what you're doing is you're teaching your mind. It's like a feedback loop system where you're teaching your mind that if this is what you're feeling, this is the habit you need to partake in order to feel better about yourself. But the opposite is happening, and that's why it's quite an irony if you really think about it. Is because, I mean, think about, let's go to the example about binge eating and stuff. So companies, they put a lot of money into research about how, like, the exact chemical that needs to be used to set off a chain reaction in your mind that keeps you addicted to eating certain products, to consuming certain food products over and over and over again. The exact level of, take a chip, right, a potato chip, the crunch, the saltiness, all of that. What is the perfect precise amount that needs to go in to make you feel like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, let's have it again. And that's, like I said, you're teaching your mind that if you keep eating this, it'll make you feel better, it'll make you feel good, let's do it again. Every time you feel sad, upset, depressed, down, heartbroken, whatever it is, you tell yourself, you know what I need to go get that packet of chips or whatever. I need to go get that chocolate, I need to go get another meal and another meal, because what, it makes me feel so good. I need to go get this pack of sweets and stuff like that. And it's actually quite intense when, I mean, that's a conversation for another day, but I mean, it's quite intense when you realize how much is like added and put into these I guess food items and stuff like that are kind of blocking certain parts of your brain. Essentially, it's actually not feeding your brain. A lot of the foods that we partake in when we're feeling down and upset and stuff like that, it's actually it doesn't feed your brain, it doesn't feed your guts, like it's everything. It's actually quite sickening. It's making you sick, it's making you worse. And that's always what happens, right? It's like we will eat all of that in the moment, we feel so good, it's like this temporary pleasure, and then what happens afterwards, we feel even worse about ourselves. Like I said, alcohol is a depressant, so after you're drinking so much and all the rest, what happens, you after spiking so high, and that dopamine had kicked the excitement of drinking, of being out, of whatever it is, you begin to crash, right? And that's the thing, alcohol, sugars, all of that, it spikes you up, and then the crash is even lower than where you were. Say you were here, you were feeling sad and like upset, and this is where you were. So you took these things to make you feel better. When you crash, you don't come back to here, you go even lower. You become even more depressed, more upset. You feel worse about yourself. You engage in self loathing practices, where there's just so much self pity, and you're ruminating over the fact that things are not great, you're not good enough, life is terrible, why do bad things keep happening to me? Focusing on everything you don't have, everything you're not achieving. It's such a, like I said, it's such a feedback loop system where we just keep engaging in it again. We feel like great for 2 seconds. It's the same thing with drugs. You're not happy with where you're at right now, you take some drugs, takes you up for a bit, and now your new baseline, it just keeps going down and down and down. And so it's not enough for you to take this much drugs anymore to feel what you felt the last time, to feel that level of exhilaration, that level of joy, nirvana, and all of that. You need to take a lot more. You need to consume a lot more now to get to some level of joy compared to the last time, right? Um, I guess, like, again, the binge eating thing, it's not enough now for you to have just a burger and fries. It's like a burger, nuggets, fries, ribs. You need a lot more now to feel excited, because it doesn't excite you anymore. It doesn't excite you the same way, because your baseline has dropped a lot lower, so it needs a lot more. You need a lot more consumption to kick that dopamine back up again. A lot more needs to happen. It's not enough anymore for you to just have one drink and to whatever it is. You need however many drinks, however many shots, however whatever it is to feel, because now you've built a tolerance, and it just doesn't feel the same anymore. It doesn't hit you the same anymore. It's like, think about, I guess, people who perhaps smoke weed. Maybe the first time you took like 2 puffs and it was like, oh my gosh, my whole world is spinning. Now it's not enough for you to get that feeling of, I don't know, I guess mellowness or calmness or whatever it is. You now need to do a lot more to experience that sensation. And then, do you understand what I mean? When I'm like that battle in your mind where, I guess, depending on what you believe in, I guess, essentially, I would say that if you're a Christian, we're taught that, like, the devil, all he has to do is learn to take over your mind, control your mind, whisper into your head. He doesn't have to do too much, and he's not even that creative. I'm reading this book called The War in Your Mind, Winning the War in Your Mind. Yes. And they were basically just speaking about, like, how the devil isn't that creative in terms of coming up with lies for you to believe. That it will be the same thing over and over and over. I'm not deserving, I'm not good enough, I'm not deserving of love, I'm not deserving of care, of nurture, of all the rest. The fears that you tell yourself that you're inadequate, that things are going to run out, and all of it comes up year after year after year. I'm lazy, I'm this, I'm whatever. And that's the thing, all it takes is for you to keep, I guess, resting in these negative habits, these terrible habits that are keeping you stuck from who it is you could be, who it is that you want to be. And I think that, to begin, I will say, watch your thoughts. Watch your thoughts. I'm going to read this quote, actually, which I think is so powerful. So it says here that you need to watch your thoughts because you need to watch your thoughts because your thoughts become your words. And you need to watch your words because your words become your actions. You need to watch your actions because your actions become your habits. You need to watch your habits because your habits become your character. You need to watch your character because your character becomes your destiny. All of this stretching from a thought. You need to win the war in your mind against your thoughts. So many thoughts happen in our minds every single day. So many. And I think over 500 of those thoughts are imposed upon you also. So that's like about, I don't know, I guess just over 2 hours of your thoughts a day, are thoughts that have been imposed on you, which is quite a lot, because if you give in to them and give attention to them, you will end up believing it, right? You will end up um like I said, your thoughts become your action. Your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits. Your habits become your character becomes your destiny. And so it's like when you start feeding into things. I mean, there's so many things every single day trying to grapple our attention, right? Our social media, the friends that we occupy, the things that we're doing in our free time. There's just advertisement everywhere. So many things that are registering in our mind and stuff like that, and we start to think, and we also have intrusive thoughts and all the rest, and we need to now examine and take stock of what it is we're thinking. And I guess a bit of neuroscience, our reticular activating system, right, is is it is this thing in our mind where our mind will respond to information that it relates to you the most, essentially. Like, basically, our ability to recognize things and disregard other stuff, right? What is more important to you right now? So, say, I mean, there's always this example of, like, say you were talking to your parents about wanting the specific car, the specific blue car, all the rest. Now every time you're on the road, you just keep seeing that car everywhere. It's just like, oh my, like every single day, you ever just have that thing happen to you where something you spoke about now it's just appearing everywhere. And that's because you've activated your reticular activating system, right? RAS. And that is that now your brain keeps sending you signals every single time you see it. And it's not that those cars weren't there to begin with. It's just that before you spoke about it, before you cared about it, it didn't register of any value, of any importance in your mind, right? But now that it's something you've been thinking about, it's something you're constantly seeing. And your brain is constantly letting you know of that information. And so when you are constantly feeding yourself negative thoughts, being in negative spaces and all of that kind of stuff, it occupies your thoughts, and it's all you're going to be seeing around you. It's all your perception, and your eyes are going to keep signaling to your brain, and it's going to keep making you feel worse about yourself. If you're constantly engaging in things that are terrible, like jealousy, envy, just a terrible nature, bad habits, having a bad attitude, also, there are people who are just constantly complaining, who just have a terrible this and a terrible that. It's all, they constantly will just keep seeing everything that is wrong in the world, in their life, because those are their thoughts that they keep feeding. That's what they keep engaging with. They feed into their intrusive thoughts, they feed into the thoughts that are imposed on them and all the rest, and it shapes their reality. Like I said, your character now becomes your destiny, your fate, and all of that. And it's like, if we're not careful about these things, if we're not thinking about what is it that I'm actually spending so much of my time thinking about doing, if your mind is constantly meditating, pondering, ruminating on things that are good, on things that are healthy, on things that are exciting, on things that are, feeding your soul and all the rest, you're going to start finding that in every sphere of your life. You're going to start seeing that everywhere you go. There's a science to this. Like, I'm not even trying to be weird about it. I'm trying to tell you that your brain is going to keep picking up on all the good that keeps happening. And that's why practicing gratitude is so important, because you're able to just feel so fulfilled and abundant with what you already have, that it feels like whatever little more you get is like, oh my gosh, there's more. There's more that I can have, there's more that I can experience. Everything feels good. And that's what I'm saying. If you keep engaging in a practice that makes you just excited and stuff, reading things, learning about things, instead of going into the negative feedback loop of doing things that make you feel worse, you know what I'm saying, and just make you feel even more depressed and stuff, learning to counteract your thoughts. That's something we're going to speak about, right? For every negative thought, I challenge you to make 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positive thoughts against it. For every time you start something, I challenge you to start speaking life, over yourself. Start speaking just, I don't know, healthier thoughts, because the thing is, like, even the people around us, sometimes they can say things that are quite bizarre. they can say things that are quite bizarre towards you and speak over you in a way that's kind of like you might not necessarily agree with, you might not even want. And it's just like it might even be a lie, right? The things that people may speak over us. Someone may tell you that nobody likes you, that nobody cares about you, and all of that. And if you believe those things, it'll be harmful. It will be so harmful. You need to learn to counteract those thoughts, counteract what someone has to say, and even more so when I say speak life and all of that, you need to we need to get in the practice of rejecting, right? Rejecting certain things that people say over us, to us, and around us, and all the rest, rejecting things that we say about ourselves. When those negative thoughts creep in, we need to learn to actually denounce those things, to actually condemn those things. I think sometimes it's like, let's just let it fly. Let's just be understanding. Let's just, this person will always be like that, like whatever. Sometimes you actually need to say, actually, enough. Enough with that. Because if you entertain it long enough, it begins to build a life inside of you. It builds a world inside of you that you'll eventually start believing that as truth. You'll start accepting that as truth. And I think that who it is you're trying to be is waiting on the other side of you rejecting a lot of things in your life. You might be feeling like, oh, I'm a lazy person because maybe your school teacher back in grade 3 said that you were lazy, or grade 4, and you think now as an adult that's just who you are and you operate the world like that. But maybe start speaking positive things over yourself and reject that. Speaking productive things over yourself and saying, actually, no, I'm not that type of person. And eventually it will carry over into everything, and you'll realize you actually are capable of doing things. You actually are capable of, they always give this advice where if you're trying to stop smoking, stop drinking, whatever it is, instead of, say for example, you're presented with an opportunity where someone's like, would you like to smoke? They pass you whatever that they're smoking and stuff like that. And usually people will say like, no, thank you. I'm trying to stop. The advice people give is saying, no, thank you, I don't smoke. Just saying, I'm not a smoker, or I'm not a drinker, or whatever it is. And that does a switch in your mind compared to saying, I'm trying to, because trying implies that there's still leeway, there's still a gap to be I guess converted otherwise, to be convinced otherwise, manipulated otherwise, whatever. But if you just tell yourself like, no, no, thank you, I'm not a drinker, whatever it is, it kind of feels absurd for you to take a drink because you've already said that that's who you're not. You've defined your identity and your character as someone who doesn't do those things. And so it makes it easier for you to reject it, because it's like, why would I do that if I just told you that's not what I do? Compared to saying, oh, well, I'm trying, I'm this and that, it gives you space to like negotiate, and maybe we need to start saying that of our lives about certain stuff. Like, I've got an assignment to do. You know what? I'm someone who gets my assignments done sooner, before time, or whatever it is. Instead of always thinking, oh, I procrastinate, I leave things for last minute anyways and stuff, start rejecting those beliefs about you that you've carried on for so long, because it's consuming your mind and it's making you trapped in being the same person you've always been when you're presented with an opportunity to grow, to be different. Speak strength over your life. Don't say, oh, I'm not strong enough to go through this. I'm not, I would say that all the time when I was going through a hard time, like, I'm not strong enough to deal with this. I can't, like, it's too much. And now I'm just like, absolutely not. Like, I will survive. I will heal. I will thrive. I know who my God is. It's just like, you have to just constantly oppose your negative thoughts with thoughts that are true, with things that there's something that I think about, that scripture that tells us that, like, in my weakness, like, his power is made perfect, and I'll rejoice all the more gladly, because when I am weak, he is strong. And it's just like, yeah, if I may feel this way, yes, like, don't don't judge me by how I'm feeling right now and think that I won't be able to succeed in life. Absolutely not, because I know who goes before me. I know who has created me and who has, I guess, created a plan and a destiny for me, and plans to prosper me and give me a future and all the rest. It's just like, you have to start speaking those truths over yourself, over your mind, because it's a lot easier to retain negative thoughts. It's a lot easier to retain negative energy, all of that kind of stuff. It honestly doesn't take much for you to do that. It's a lot harder to work in the opposite. But the more you do it, you need like you need to do it a lot. Repetition here is very important. And I think that's why some people would advise things like speaking affirmations and all the rest. Because when you constantly are in a repetitive cycle of saying these things to yourself, of doing things in a certain way, it just becomes second nature to you. It just becomes what you believe. It just becomes what you think. It just becomes who you are. You end up just kind of embodying that, right? Repetition is so important. Like, I think that's also why the Bible tells us, we need to meditate on his word, because eventually you just start like believing it. You just start knowing it. It just becomes automatic. You need to repeat your habits over and over and over, the things you're trying to do when you're trying to change your goals, trying to change your routines and all of that. You need to do it over and over and over again until it becomes second nature to you, until it just feels effortless, until it becomes just who you are. you know don't underestimate the power of repetition. Repetition is so important. When there's something you're setting out for, do it again and again and again. Don't quit when it starts to get difficult. Don't quit when it starts to get challenging or there's obstacles or hurdles. Do it again and again and again. And I think we need to keep reminding ourselves of the power of the tongue, right? Your tongue holds the power of life and death. And sometimes we may speak very harmful things over ourselves. And, we need to really just, I mean, we need to be really focused and become more aware of the things we're saying, of the things we're saying out loud and stuff like that. Because it's also, like I keep saying, it's teaching our brains what we think about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, the relationship we have with ourselves, if we love ourselves or not. The things that we're saying out loud, your brain is always listening. It's always taking in that information and is feeding you that reality. It is feeding you that perception, that perspective, that way of seeing the world. The more you just keep yeah, I think saying things in general, like, don't take for granted the things that come out your mouth, because it's also informing the rest of the world, what's on your heart, what's on your mind, how you think. You know what I'm saying, of that nature. And if you cannot gain control of your thoughts, if you cannot gain control of your mind and stuff, I mean, we are called every single day to win the war with our minds. um that is the battle that really is so important and that matters, because it shapes so much of who you are. And if you're weak minded, and I guess complacent with that, you give so much room for the enemy to take so much space, in your life, in your mind, in the way that you operate. You give too much of a gap, and you make it too easy for anybody to influence you in the wrong direction. And I think that if we start learning how to train our minds, start learning how to practice just walking in in alignment with who it is we want to be, who it is we say, who it is God says you are, and all the rest, I think that it just becomes, the war with your mind just becomes a lot easier. You stop falling back into those habits of feeling, I guess, lazy, unproductive, unworthy, unwanted, all of that kind of stuff. You stop falling back into those habits of doing things that are harmful, of self-sabotaging practices, because your mind is guarded. You know what you're working towards, you know what's going on. And I think if you keep earning that credibility with yourself, like I said, it makes it also easier to believe that you can survive this dark cloud, that you will get through this dark feeling you're going through, that you will get through this heartbreak, that you will get through this disappointment, that you will get through this hurdle. If you build credibility, and by credibility, it's like that thing of, if you say you're going to do something and you do something, that is evidence and proof that you're able to, that you have the capacity to, that it is like, it's a history of you being able to conquer difficult things, of you being able to show up for yourself, to count on yourself. And being able to do that makes it a lot easier to denounce and reject other things that you don't need to be believing in, you don't need to be partaking in. And I think that is something that has been helping me a lot. I was feeling really low for some time, until I realized, like, no, like, these are not my thoughts that I'm thinking right now. These are, this is not even me, and I realized I needed to take action. I needed to get up, and I needed to change. I needed to change how my thoughts were operating, and I needed to choose what it is that I'm feeding my mind constantly, because it's taking over my life. And yeah, that's really what I wanted to say today, is just get up and face the decisions that are going on in your mind, and choose the one that works best for you, that honors you the best, that honors your goals the best. As always, I'm sending my love. Goodbye.
What in the 20s is going
In the
on
20s
here?
here.
The 20s,
What
baby.
baby?
In the 20s. What in the 20s is
I am
going
here
on?
for my
20s, baby. This is the 20s.